Welcome everybody. Sorry for the false start. As I posted in a previous message, please bear with me as I get to understand how to use this Facebook Live technology. It's my first time using it, and it probably shows. But regardless, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first of these VisualWRAP question and answer sessions. So throughout the month of March, we're planning to hold one of these sessions every week, and that's in support of the VisualWRAP Challenge. My name is Dave Boyle. I'm the author of the VisualWRAP software, and 19 years ago we launched VisualWRAP at the Guild Conclave in Tennessee. So myself and my wife travelled halfway around the world for that show, and I expected VisualWRAP to be a huge success and be an absolute showstopper. And I think at that show I sold 7 copies to paying customers. So from humble beginnings, we fast forward to 2021, and now there's several thousand people with copies of VisualWRAP on their machines. Decorative wrapping is going through an amazing phase. It's fueled by groups like the NERBs, like Southern Rod Builders, people who are absolutely passionate about sharing their knowledge and helping each other to learn the art and promote the art. With social media, it's becoming easier for us to share our works. It's all a wonderful situation right now for rod building, and especially for thread art. So the rules of the ThreadCentral VisualWRAP Challenge are quite simple. Create a pattern or modify a pattern in VisualWRAP, wrap that pattern on a blank or a dowel, and then post a photo of the VisualWRAP screen and the actual pattern you wrapped onto your social media platform. We're happy to offer what assistance we can, and part of that assistance is these weekly VisualWRAP question and answer sessions. So as I'm talking through the VisualWRAP software, I'll be showing my screen. You can post questions into the comments section. Billy will answer as many questions as he can. And as we go through, if you have any particular topics you'd like to see covered on future sessions, type those in as well, and we'll be able to consider those for next week's session. So right now you should be able to see my VisualWRAP screen. And the first thing I'd like to do to get you familiar with the software, I'll just go through the process of opening up a pattern and wrapping it in a few different ways. So we can open up our patterns, and our patterns are saved in the form of scripts. Those scripts are available in the form of a standard pattern library, which is available for download from the ThreadCentral website. We also have various pattern packs, which are available as a purchase for download from the ThreadCentral website. Now, I'm going to open a pattern called 1024, which is in this folder, 1024 pinwheel. And with the pattern loaded, you can see a lot of gobbledygook computer language in the bottom screen. That's called the VisualWRAP script, and that's the programming language which VisualWRAP uses to understand where to put lines on the screen, and what colors to use, and what sequence to put those lines down. Lines on the screen represent threads on your rod. Not necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but it's an approximation of what patterns should look like on your screen, and then you use various sizing techniques to size those patterns to suit your rod. So once we have a pattern loaded, we can hit the wrap button, and when I do that, pattern wraps as quickly as possible. At the moment, we've got a single pattern repeat which is showing, and we might like to see multiple pattern repeats on our screen. So up the top of the screen here, we see this number 1 that represents the number of repeats, and a plus and minus. As I hit the plus, the number of pattern repeats increases. So if I hit wrap, I'm now wrapping 4 repeats of this pretty pattern. I can go all the way up to 10 is the maximum number of pattern repeats that we can see. When I'm playing around with patterns, I'm typically using 3 or maybe 4 pattern repeats on the screen at any one time. That just seems to be a usable number of repeats. When I'm hitting wrap, that pattern is wrapping as quickly as the computer can manage it. On the right-hand side of our screen, we have these 3 buttons. We have the auto mode, the delay mode, and the single mode. And these give us some control about how quickly that wrap appears on our screen. So if I was to hit clear, which erases all of the threads from the screen, and if I hit delay, that's putting the VizwrapQA software into delay mode. So when I hit wrap, it will put a slight pause of a fraction of a second between each thread which lays down on the screen. So now when I hit wrap, you'll see that the threads appear, but they appear more slowly. And that gives you a good understanding of how the pattern is developing. And to me, that's the key to understanding how to wrap the pattern on your rod. It's understanding the sequence to follow and what the pattern should be looking like at every single stage of the wrap. So at the moment, it's currently wrapping part of the background, and then in a moment it'll give us it will stop. There's actually a preference setting which can be used to set the number of seconds or fractions of a second between each wrap. I think the default is set to 0.2 of a second. So that seems to be a fairly good way of showing a pattern developing in slow motion. Now on the right hand side, we also see this single mode. Now if I hit single, you'll find that the pattern pauses wherever it is, and it's now waiting for us to hit the next button. And as we hit the next button, it'll put the next thread onto the screen. So I can go next, 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 and it's putting more threads on the screen, and it'll keep putting more threads until I stop hitting next. And we can then pause and take measurements or compare it to what we see on our rod. But it gives us total control about what threads are showing and how far into the pattern we want to go before we pause. At any time I can switch between these modes. So if I hit delay now, it'll return to the pause between each thread. And then if I hit auto, it will continue to wrap the pattern as quickly as possible. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can see that you've got good control over how the pattern is wrapped on your screen. Now this is what the pattern looks like laid out flat. If we hit the 3D button, which is at the top of the screen in the menu bar, that launches the 3D viewer. It takes a second or so to initialize, but once it does, it will then show an image of that wrap in 3 dimensions. So if I hit fit, we can see what the pattern is going to look like on our rod. And if I click on the rod itself, that changes the background, and there's about 7 or 8 different preset backgrounds which are loaded, and you can simply keep clicking until you find a nice contrasting background which is easy on the eye and gives you good visibility of the whole pattern. If I click on the handle of the rod, that will pause the rotation. And then if I click on the end wrap, or just above the grip, that will start the rotation again. We also have the ability of clicking and dragging within this background, and that allows us to spin the rod around. So we can look at it like sighting down a gun, that sort of thing. So we get a pretty good idea of how the pattern is going to look, and we see that we can have good control over the visualization of that pattern. So the next thing I'd like to discuss is changing colors. Now, if you bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so at the moment we can see that this pattern is using these shades of pink and purple and black for a background. And I might like to change those colors. So this purple color at the moment is this spool color number 1. So stepping back a moment, along the top of our screen we have these spools, and by default there are 8 spools shown, and then there are several other colors which can be used in scripts as well. Colors for the grip, the rod, the end wrap and the under wrap. So in this pattern, the dark purple is spool number 1, and if I double click on spool number 1, it drops down a selection menu to allow me to change the colors to something else. So at the moment, this is the NURBS Shade Packs library which is loaded. Rather than purple and pink, I might like to change that to, say, a darkish sort of turquoise. So I double click on the color I'd like, and then I'll change the pink to, say, a light turquoise from the shade pack. So in my spool selections along the top of the screen, I've changed the selection of colors. Now when I hit wrap, it picks up those spool colors and the color of the wrap has changed. And obviously if I hit the 3D viewer, it shows the pattern again in the new colors. Anything that's shown in this flat view window, when I hit the 3D viewer, it sends that image onto the 3D rod. So we can go through and try different colors and see what we like. Perhaps we don't like the black background, and at the moment the background is using spool number 3, which is this black here. So if I double click on that, and maybe I want to see what it looks like with a orange background. Double click on that, click wrap, and I can see that that's what the new pattern looks like. Maybe I like that color combination, maybe I don't. Maybe that's the customer's favorite color combination. The point I'm trying to make is that we've got full control on what colors are assigned to what spools, and within our script those spools are used. So I can quickly change colors, see what they look like. I could show that to a customer if it was if the customer happened to be in our shop and I had my laptop available, or I could even print that out. And it's possible to print this out true to size and actually curl that around the rod, and you've then got a very quick method of looking at how the pattern is going to look, sized to your rod. in the colors that are chosen. So again, it's a very good way of visualizing how a pattern is going to look on your rod before you ever have to lift a spool of thread. I mentioned that these colors, when I change the colors, are coming from the NURBS Shade Pack library. So again, if I wanted to change the background, instead of using this orange, I might want to use this green 2 color. If I click wrap, that's another color combination. Perhaps I want to change the selection of colors that I'm using. So in that case, if I wanted to change from the NURBS colors to, say, the Mudhole ProWrap colors, I would click on More Colors, or double click on it, and then click on this open symbol, and here are a list of the different color libraries that are available. If these don't appear in your selection on your system, each of these is available for download from the ThreadCentral website. So you go to the VizwrapQA area, you go to the download section, and you'll find these various shade pack and other libraries available for download. So if I was to double click on the ProWrap Nylon Colorfast library, it asks me if I wish to clear the patterns that are there. If I say yes, it then goes through and it loads the library with the new colors, and I'm then free to start using those. So I could change the colors to, say, a reddish color and say a bubblegum color, and wrap that. So that's a basic rundown on changing colors within your script, changing the thread libraries that are available to choose from. You may wonder why I've chosen this particular pinwheel pattern to play with. So Mary McIntyre Christie from Southern Rod Builders is running a pinwheel challenge this month. And the idea of the challenge is to wrap a pinwheel either on a rod or onto a dowel and post the results. In the process, you'll be able to learn a new pattern, and you'll also be able to improve your wrapping skills. And along the way, you can ask for help. So if you'd like to participate in that pinwheel challenge, visit the Southern Rod Builders, ask a question there, or even on the NURBS Facebook page. You'll be given pointers to what's involved in the pinwheel challenge. You could even use this pinwheel pattern as part of the VisualWRAP challenge that we're running this month. It's up to you. Mary has also published a step-by-step video on how this pinwheel pattern develops. So you can visit her Decorative Wrapping Teachables online wrapping school, and there's a series of very professionally curated videos taking you through every aspect of making this wrap, from starting the wrap to wrapping it to finishing it. So check that out, and that will help you with this particular pattern. So now let's look at sizing a pattern to suit your rod. So I mentioned earlier that I might like to print this out true to size to suit the rod that I'm wrapping on. So we have a window called the taper view window. And if we go to the top menu bar on the screen, and there's this tapered icon, or I can go to window taper. That then shows this window called a taper view window. You might notice that the pattern looks a little bit compressed at one end and normal in the middle and elongated at the other end. So what's happening there is the pattern is being adjusted to suit the taper of the rod. If we tell it that the rod has a dramatic taper. So the tip, we're just going to say, is 8 millimeters, and the butt end is 12 millimeters, and we say refresh. We see that that pattern gets dramatically changed to suit the taper of the rod. And what the software is doing in the background is it's doing the taper offset spacing algorithm. It's working out the size of the rod at various positions, and it's working out how to space the center points of the pattern so that as you close the pattern on the rod, the pattern will close nicely. If you were to wrap a pattern onto a tapered rod and you don't use the tapered offset methods to adjust the spacing, then you will probably find that as the pattern starts to close at the tip end, you'll find there's too many threads and they start to overlap, and at the butt end there's not enough threads and there's gaps. And all of this is happening at the same time, and it's enough to make you want to cut the pattern off and start again. So we have the ability of sizing the pattern to suit our rod, and that's what this taper view window is all about. And how we use this window is as follows. We have two measurements we can put in. We can put in a butt diameter, which is the measurement of the rod, the diameter of the rod at the butt end, where the wrap is going to start. There's also a measurement we can take at the position where the pattern is going to end on the rod. So that's towards the tip. So we can use our calipers to measure the diameter. We can enter those diameters into the sizing screen, and it will calculate the wrap length. The trouble is, when we start, we're never quite sure exactly how long the pattern is going to be. Therefore, we're never quite sure where to measure the tip diameter at. So the method that I use is to estimate on our rod, or we know where the pattern is going to start. Let's estimate where the center of the pattern is going to be. So on our particular rod, we will put our calipers where we think the center of the pattern is going to be, and say we took a measurement, and that measurement happens to be 10 millimeters at the center position of the wrap. So let's put in 10 as the diameter for both the butt and the tip. That effectively tells the software that there is no taper. So we get a nice clean pattern, but what it tells us, and that this is the important information, is the wrap length will be 94 millimeters. If we had more pattern repeats, so I'm going to increase this now to 5 pattern repeats, we can wrap that again, we can refresh the taper view screen. We now have 5 pattern repeats, but now the wrap length is 157 millimeters. So now that we know what the overall wrap length is going to be, once we've settled on the right length for our rod, we can now take an actual measurement at the butt end. We can then move along the rod by an amount of 157 millimeters, and we can take the measurement at the tip end. So we might find that at the butt end, the measurement is 11, and at the tip end, our measurement is 9. So when I hit refresh, we'll see the wrap length remains the same, but we've now adjusted the pattern nicely for the taper. If I hit the print button, that will send this image to the printer, and I can actually hold this up against the rod and measure or take markings from the pattern against the blank of the rod as to where the critical points are. And typically the critical points are the center of each repeat. If I take us back quickly to our original screen. One thing we can do is we can wrap all of the threads, or we can just wrap the layout threads. So if I go clear and hit wrap, suddenly we're now just wrapping the layout threads. If I then go to my taper view window, it puts the layout threads there, which means I can print true to size the layout threads, and that might make it easier for me to mark off specific crossing points on my blank. Another option we have for understanding where our marking points need to be is back on the taper view window, the spacing chart. So a spacing chart looks at the number of patterns that we have. It assumes that each of the patterns is centered. And what I mean by centered is that if I have a single instance of a pattern, and in this case, let's return it to be the whole pattern. In this case, this pattern is centered because I guess the center of the pattern is in the center of the repeat. So that the spacing list assumes that our pattern is centered. It looks at the measurements that you've put into the taper view window, and it calculates the distance between centers that are required. So if we have, say, 4 pattern repeats, it calculates the distance between centers that are required. If I hit 2D draw, what that does is it draws those measurements onto the two-dimensional image, and that gives us another reference of how to understand what these measurements actually mean in terms of the actual pattern that we're looking at. If I was to now go to the taper view window, the image which is in the flat view gets sent to the taper view window, and again I can print that true to size. Okay. So I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about scripts. A lot of people ask about scripts, and they can seem intimidating because, I mean, how on earth do you understand what this means? When I wrote the software, there was never any intention for people to read this script. In fact, if there was a way of hiding this script so that no one needed to look at it, then I would have done that. What I did find was that the methods I've used to have VisualWRAP do what it does, it made some sense to have a simple language, a simple scripting language that gives more advanced users the ability to change and tweak the script if they want to do so. The VisualWRAP help file, which is launched by going to the help button, has got a section called script syntax, and in that it gives you an explanation of what each element of the script means. To be honest, I don't think many people really needs to go into too much detail on scripts unless you want to get into some more advanced aspects, such as shading within scripts. But the basic concepts of a script are positions. So X and Y represent coordinates. So if I look at a single instance of a pattern, this X140 and Y150 means that 40% along the horizontal axis, which is the X-axis, and 50% of the Y-axis, or 50% down the vertical part of the screen, is where this particular coordinate is. So this is talking about a box, and if I launch the builder, that might show us a bit more clearly. This script builder gives you a visual indication of what the line in the script actually means. So the different typical layouts that we use in scripts are a thread, a single thread going up or down the rod, a cross, which is placed on the rod, or a box. And in this particular pinwheel script, we can see that there's a box, and it's made from a light thread and a dark thread, and those colors alternate. And the first position is at 40-50, so it's 40% of the way along, 50% of the way down, and the second position is 60-50, so it's 60% of the way along and 50% down. These particular colors are used. The progression which is used is an outwards progression, which means each subsequent pass goes to the outside of the last time that this box was wrapped. Within the script, we tell it whether to use a band of threads or a progression, a plus or minus progression. In a band of threads, every time we make a pass, then we use the same number of threads. If there was, say, a +1 progression, then on the first pass, we might do a box which is made of a single set of threads. On the second pass, because it's +1, we increase the number of threads by 1. So suddenly, instead of one thread going up, going down, we'd have 2 threads going up, going down, and so on. If it was +2, then on each subsequent pass, there'd be 2 extra threads added to what we did last time. The script allows us to tell us how many threads to start with and how many passes to make. And we build up a pattern by adding lines of script. You could type in the script manually. I don't know anyone who would torture themselves by doing that. I always use this script builder to create the script and add lines to the script. So if I was to very quickly do a new script, I don't want to save this, I do want to clear it. I can give the script a name. I could give the first section a name. I might decide that I want the rod to be a white color, just so I can underwrap white, so I can clear that. I might want to put a cross right in the middle, so I'm going to choose the cross layout. And the colors I'm going to use, well, I don't like either of those colors. I'm going to use a bright green, well, at the moment, a bright green for both of them. That's fine. And I want that to be dead center, so I'm going to put that at 50-50. 50-50. I'm going to have this cross move outwards. It's going to be a +1 progression, and I'm going to do, let's start by making 5 passes. And if I go, I either insert, replace, or append. As I'm adding lines of script, I append them. So I say append. And if I go into delay and go clear wrap, what you'll see is it's just wrapping lots of green lines. It might make a bit more sense if I fast forward. Let's change the colors of one of those scripts. So instead of both of them being spool number 3, let's make one of them spool number 2. So with this line highlighted, I'll make the line going down spool number 2, and I'll replace the line of script which is there. And so now I can see I've got spool up, which is number 3, which is the green, spool down is number 2, which is the pink. So now if I wrap the same pattern, that was in the auto mode. If I go delay, clear, wrap, it's wrapping exactly what we've told it to do, wrap outwards, and it's calculating the number of threads to use based on the number of passes and the progression, which is +1. Now, at the same time, within this section, I might like to put a box which is coming inwards. So if I go box, and let's choose a dark color like let's say, well, let's use black. Don't get much darker than that. So if I want to start this at, say, 15, so 15% of the way along this way, and then if we come back 15, 100 minus 15 is 85. 85. We want this one to go inwards, and I'm going to say it'll be a band of one thread. We'll play around with the passes. So I'm going to say append that. As I've made these selections, you might see that the preview gives us a line of script. So if I say append, that adds that line of scripts to the bottom. So now, when I hit clear and wrap, it starts by wrapping the original line, which is the box going outwards, and it also does the box going inwards. And if I hit auto just to speed things up a bit, that is the pattern we've just created. Now I might think to myself, yeah, let's move this box inwards a little bit. I'm not happy with it starting at 15. Instead of 15, let's come into, say, 25. So if I go here, and I can manually change it to 25, and instead of 85, let's go to 75. And if I go clear and then wrap again, you'll see that it's changed that pattern slightly. And say I want to come in just a little bit more, so let's go to 30 and 70. 30 and 70. Hit clear, hit wrap. Okay, so this is the pattern I've just created. Let's see what it looks like with a few more repeats. Go wrap. Okay. Do I like the look of that? Let's have a look at how it might appear on a rod. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. But the point is I can then play with sizing. I could play with colors. I might decide to shade any or some of these colors, and I would have to manually shade that, but it is possible. I could play around with background colors. Once I'm happy with the way the pattern looks, I can then size that to suit my rod. And for example, if I want to know how to actually size that for my rod, going back to what I was saying before, let's take a measurement at the center of where the wrap is going to be, and that might be, say, 12 millimeters. So I'm going to put 12 and 12. If I go refresh, it's telling me that if the center of my rod is measured at 12 millimeters diameter, and there are 3 pattern repeats, then the overall length, which is from the start here to the end here, is going to be 113 millimeters. I can then take an actual measurement at the beginning of my wrap, which for the sake of the exercise might be 13, and I can take an actual measurement at the tip end, which for the sake of the exercise might be 11. When I hit refresh, it resizes it to suit the taper. If I was to print that out, that will print true to size. I can cut that out and hold it against my rod, wrap it around the rod, and instantly see how it's going to look on the rod. I can again go to my spacing table. Based on the numbers we've given it, the number of repeats, the measurements for the button tip diameter, and the calculated wrap length, we can go to 2D Draw, and it's telling us the spacings that we should be using. As I was showing earlier, I can wrap all of the threads, or I can wrap the layout threads only. And if I was to send that to the taper view and print that out, this is typically the sort of printout that I use when I'm doing my wraps, which is unfortunately few and far between. I get so busy with life that I don't get to wrap very often. One day I will though. This is typically the view that I print out. It shows the initial layout threads only, and it's scaled to suit my rod. So I then print that out, fold it over, hold it against my rod, and mark off those crossing points because they're the critical points. Okay, so that covers the basics that I was hoping to cover today. Are there any specific questions that anyone would like to type, or any questions that you'd like to type for future sessions? Like, for example, when we have our session next week, I'd like to go into some more advanced topics, but I would like to focus these sessions on things that people are interested in hearing. So if you would like to share your questions, please do so. You could even share the questions on, say, the NERBS site, or even the Southern site. In fact, perhaps the best place to share them is the VisualWRAP users group on Facebook. If you're not aware, we have a users group that I've set up on Facebook. It has, I don't know, maybe 350 members at the moment. It's growing all the time. That's the ideal place for anything to do with VisualWRAP. Into that members group, I've started putting some videos, some how-to videos showing different aspects of using the software. And that's the ideal place for posting questions about any aspect of using the software. Maybe it's a beginner's question, maybe it's an advanced question. Got a lot of clever people in there, a lot of people who've used the software for a long time. Also a lot of newbies in there as well. Everyone is welcome. The purpose of the group is just to help us all use VisualWRAP better. I even learned things about the different ways that people are using the software, things that I had never even considered when I was writing the code. And it's just a great forum for the sharing of information. Okay. One or two extra points that I'd like to mention. What I'm going to try to do is turn my video on. Now this is possibly fraught with danger because this is what killed the first session. So I'm not going to do the same thing I used last time. If I say, yep, I'm nervous about telling it to stop sharing because I think that turns off the whole Facebook Live feed, which I don't want to do. What I would like to do is go away from using my screen share and onto my video, but I'll have to do some research afterwards and work out how best to do that. So we have some useful aids for helping you get the most out of the software. One of those is the pattern pack printed index books. So when you use the software, you can open up scripts. I don't want to save. I do want to clear. I can choose different scripts to look at. When the with either the standard pattern library, which is available for free download, or the pattern packs 1 to 4, which are available for purchase from the ThreadCentral download store. When you download those, they come with a PDF, and that PDF is an index book which shows a picture of each of these images. So you may be comfortable using the PDF on the screen. That's great. Some people find it more convenient to print them out. And if you work out how much ink it takes to print out 40 or so pages of colour, or even get them professionally printed, it costs quite a bit. I've been able to get a bulk order done of printouts of these pattern pack indexes, and I'm able to sell those at a discounted rate on the store. So if you visit the ThreadCentral download store, you can check out those printed index books, and they may help you with the selection of patterns going forward. They're also a good selling point if you're sitting with your customer, that you can have the customer thumb through the pages and say, oh, I like this pattern, or you can show them particular patterns that you'd like them to consider. So that's one thing I'd like to mention. Another thing that I'd like to mention going forward is the the collaboration, which you may have heard some mention being made of just recently. So this particular VisualWRAP challenge we're calling the ThreadCentral challenge. And ThreadCentral, when I produced the website a number of years ago, was intended to be everything related to ThreadArt. So initially it's focused on my software because they're the products that I had at the time, and I've tried to grow the portfolio of products there. Over time, it's become very apparent to me that as an individual you can go so far, and there are many talented individuals out there, and two heads are always better than one, and I think three heads are even better than two. And in doing what I do, I've come to become and work more closely with Billy Vivona. So I've become more and more involved in the NURBS, and in the past couple of years, I've come to know Mary McIntyre Christie and the Southern Rod Building Facebook group, and it's become clear that the things that we do are highly complementary. We're all focused on the art. We're all focused on helping other people. Each of us have different styles and skills and capabilities, and by working more closely together, we're realizing that we can help people in more and better ways. So what we're in the process of doing is increasing the capabilities and the products that ThreadCentral will be carrying. So over time, it'll take us a little bit of time to get things up and launched, but over time, expect to see more information coming from the collaboration between myself, Mary, and Billy. And we're hoping that this leads to a further increase in the art. It allows each of us to focus on where our strengths are and our capabilities, and that should then lead to better products, better support, better information, because at the end of the day, the sharing of the information and the ability to communicate what needs to be done to achieve these amazing wraps and grips and other aspects of the art of rod building, we want to improve that. So stay tuned. Once the ThreadCentral website has gone through an upgrade, there will be an announcement later in the year. It'll take us a little bit of time to get there, but in the meantime, expect to see more posts which include 2 or 3 of us together, and hopefully that leads to much better results for all of us. So we're just about out of time. I did see there was one message which came through. Which view did I say I usually print out, the flat view or the taper one? So if you want to print out true to size, you need to do that from the taper view. And that's the one that has the print button on it. So when we hit print, that will print the taper view true to size according to the measurements that we've put in. You may notice if you need to change from portrait to landscape on your printer, do that in your Windows default printer settings rather than through the VisualWRAP software. That is one bug with the software at the moment. If I hit preferences for a printer in this dialog box, it doesn't actually use those preferences. It defaults to whatever the Windows default printer settings are. So if you need to change from portraits to landscape, do that in your Windows default settings, then print from VisualWRAP, and then you can go back and change the default back in Windows. So we're at the end of the session tonight. Thank you everybody for your participation. Thanks for your patience as I fumbled around with trying to get the Facebook Live to behave itself. Hopefully next week I'll be able to share my video and we can have another one of these good Facebook Live sessions. In the meantime, visit ThreadCentral, check out the products there, visit the VisualWRAP users group on Facebook to ask questions. You can join the group, you can check out some of the resources that are there. Visit Mary's thread art, decorative wraps, teachables school. There you'll find various videos on doing the various wraps, especially the latest pinwheel wrap. It's a fantastic set of videos that Mary's put together, and it goes through that pinwheel wrap step by step. And visit the NURBS. Expect to get some attitude from Billy. That's what he's famous for, but it's also the reason that the NURBS is flourishing, because he calls a spade, and he wants to see that you can do the best work possible. So ask questions, but be prepared to try things yourself as well. Don't expect to be handed things on a plate. Have a go, fail if you need to, cut things off, try again. Always looking to improve, and we're not here to compare each other. We're here to improve ourselves and help each other improve. Thank you very much for everyone's time tonight. Hopefully that's been a good session, and I look forward to running this again next week. Thank you, everybody, and I will end the video in a few seconds.